As a surrogate, I gave birth to a baby girl instead of the baby boy the parents longed for. What happened next made them regret their decision. They wanted a son. They rejected their daughter. I never planned to be a mother, but fate had other plans. Now someone is watching me, and they want her back. A story of heartbreak, second chances, and a choice that changes everything. Will love conquer regret, or will the past come back to haunt us? Subscribe now, follow the journey, and don't miss a single twist. The rain poured heavily the night Sophia gave birth. The hospital room was dimly lit, casting long shadows on the walls. The rhythmic beeping of the monitors filled the space, a steady reminder of the life she had just brought into the world. She lay exhausted on the hospital bed, her dark curls plastered to her damp forehead, her breathing shallow from the strain of labor. But even through the pain, she smiled. The tiny baby girl, wrapped in a soft pink blanket, rested peacefully in her arms. Sophia traced a gentle finger along the baby's delicate cheek. This was supposed to be a moment of joy, of celebration, but an unspoken tension lingered in the air. "Is it a boy?" A voice broke the silence. Sophia looked up, her heart tightening. Daniel and Elaine Richards, the baby's biological parents, stood at the foot of her bed, their hands clenched together. Daniel's strong jaw was set, his expression unreadable, while Elaine's wide, anxious eyes darted between Sophia and the tiny bundle in her arms. Sophia swallowed. She had known this moment would come, but she had never imagined it would feel like this. "It's a girl," she said softly. The silence that followed was suffocating. Elaine's lips parted slightly, as if she were about to say something, but no words came. Daniel took a step back, his face darkening. This wasn't supposed to happen," he muttered. Sophia felt a stab of something, guilt, anger, sadness. She wasn't sure. All she knew was that this was the child she had carried, nurtured, and loved for 9 months. And now, she was just a mistake in the eyes of the people who had longed for her. Elaine finally spoke, her voice a whisper. "We were expecting a boy." A heavy weight settled in Sophia's chest. She had known their preference. They had made it clear from the beginning. This child was supposed to be their perfect son, the heir to their family name. But nature had its plans. Sophia hesitated before extending the baby toward them. "She's healthy. She's perfect. You're her parents." Daniel's jaw tightened. "We need some time," he said stiffly, turning toward the door. Elaine cast one last glance at the baby, her expression unreadable, before following her husband out of the room. The door clicked shut, and just like that, Sophia was alone, with the baby girl they no longer wanted. A single tear slid down her cheek as she held the child closer. She had done everything right. She had given them a life. But somehow, she had already begun to sense that this story was far from over. The hospital corridors were eerily silent when the nurse walked in the next morning. The sun filtered through the blinds, casting golden streaks across the sterile white walls. Sophia sat upright in her bed, cradling the newborn against her chest. She had barely slept. The baby, unaware of the world's expectations, had slept soundly through the night, her tiny fingers curled around the fabric of Sophia's hospital gown. Sophia looked up as the nurse approached. Her heart pounded in her chest when she saw who followed behind. Daniel and Elaine. They walked in slowly, their expressions unreadable. Elaine held onto Daniel's arm as if she needed his support to keep standing. Daniel's face was rigid, his eyes locked on the baby in Sophia's arms. "We've made a decision," Daniel said finally, his voice devoid of warmth. Sophia's fingers instinctively tightened around the baby. "What do you mean?" Elaine exhaled shakily. We can't take her." The words sliced through Sophia like a blade. "What?" Daniel shifted uncomfortably. "We were clear about what we wanted, Sophia. A boy. We've been preparing for him for months. The nursery, the name, everything was set. This changes everything." Sophia's throat tightened. "She is your daughter." Elaine's gaze dropped to the child, and for a fleeting moment, something flickered in her eyes, uncertainty, hesitation. But then she shook her head. "No, we can't do this," she whispered. A cold wave of anger and disbelief washed over Sophia. "So what? You're just leaving her?" Daniel's jaw tightened. "We're not abandoning her. We've spoken to the agency. There are options. We can find another family, someone who actually wants a girl." Sophia's blood ran cold. "Like she's some object you can just return?" Elaine flinched, but didn't answer. The baby stirred in Sophia's arms, letting out a soft whimper. She looked down at the child, at the tiny life that had just entered the world, and something inside her shifted. She had agreed to be a surrogate because she wanted to give a couple the joy of parenthood. She had never expected this, never imagined she would be holding a child that nobody wanted. "You should leave," Sophia said quietly. Elaine hesitated, but Daniel didn't. He turned on his heel and walked out. Elaine lingered for a moment longer before following him, her arms wrapped tightly around herself. The door clicked shut, and once again, Sophia was alone. Except this time, it wasn't just her. She looked down at the baby girl, at the child who had been rejected before even getting a chance. A new, terrifying thought took root in her mind. If they didn't want her, what would happen next? Sophia didn't have the answer, but one thing was clear. This child was now her responsibility. Sophia sat motionless, staring at the tiny bundle in her arms. The weight of the baby girl pressed against her chest, grounding her in a reality she hadn't expected. She had entered this arrangement with a clear understanding she would carry this child, bring her into the world, and then walk away. That had been the plan. But now? Now, the child's biological parents had abandoned her. A knock at the door startled Sophia from her thoughts. The nurse from earlier, a kind-faced woman named Rachel, stepped in. "Hey, sweetheart," she said gently, her eyes flicking to the baby. I heard what happened." Sophia swallowed the lump in her throat. "They don't want her," she whispered. The words felt foreign on her tongue, like she was speaking someone else's tragedy. Rachel sighed, shaking her head. "It's not the first time I've seen something like this. You'd be surprised how many people back out when things don't go exactly as planned." Sophia looked down at the baby. Her tiny fingers twitched in her sleep, her breath slow and steady. The thought of her ending up in the system, bounced between foster homes, never knowing where she truly belonged, made Sophia's stomach twist. "What happens now?" she asked hesitantly. Rachel hesitated before answering. "The agency will try to place her with another family. There are waiting lists, but it could take time." Time. Sophia had carried this child for 9 months. She had felt her kicks, spoken to her, dreamed of the life she would have. Could she just let her go now? Rachel studied her face, then spoke softly. "You know, you could keep her." Sophia's breath caught. The thought had been forming in the back of her mind, but hearing someone else say it made it real. I wasn't supposed to be a mother," she admitted. Rachel smiled. "Maybe not, but plans change, sweetheart, and sometimes the unexpected things turn out to be the best things." Sophia looked at the sleeping baby. She had been prepared to let go of her, but now it was as if the universe had given her a choice. And maybe, just maybe, she already knew what her answer would be. Sophia left the hospital 2 days later with a baby she was never supposed to call her own. The legal process had been surprisingly smooth, perhaps because the biological parents had wanted nothing to do with her. The agency had given them an option to reconsider, but Daniel and Elaine hadn't even bothered to respond. Now, as Sophia stepped out into the cold autumn air, she felt a strange mix of fear and determination. The weight of the baby carrier in her hand felt heavier than it should have, not just because of the child inside, but because of the responsibility it now represented. She had named her Emma. The name had come to her in the quiet hours of the night, when she lay awake in the hospital, watching the tiny baby sleep. It meant universal, a fitting name for a child who had been unwanted but now belonged to someone who had chosen her. As she placed Emma carefully in the back seat of her aging sedan, a flood of questions rushed through her mind. Could she do this alone? She had never planned to be a mother. Her small apartment barely had space for a crib, and her job as a freelance writer wasn't exactly stable. Would she be able to give Emma the life she deserved? A sharp gust of wind blew through the parking lot, making Emma stir in her car seat. Sophia reached down instinctively, tucking the blanket around her tiny body. "I guess it's just you and me now," she whispered. Emma's small lips parted in sleep, her chest rising and falling with perfect trust in the world around her. Sophia felt something shift inside her. She had made her decision. There was no turning back. As she pulled onto the road, she didn't notice the car parked a few spaces away. Inside sat Elaine Richards. Her fingers trembled as she gripped the steering wheel, her tear-filled eyes never leaving the baby she had just walked away from. Sophia had expected exhaustion. She had expected the sleepless nights, the crying at odd hours, the endless cycle of feeding and changing. What she hadn't expected was how fiercely she would love Emma. In just a few short weeks, the baby had become the center of her world. Sophia found herself studying every tiny expression, every coo and gurgle, memorizing the way Emma's small fingers clutched onto her own. But as much as Sophia had embraced motherhood, an unsettling feeling had begun to creep in. She felt like she was being watched. It started as a shadow in her peripheral vision when she pushed Emma's stroller through the park, a car idling too long outside her apartment complex, a fleeting sense that someone was following her footsteps when she walked home from the grocery store. At first, she told herself it was paranoia. Adjusting to motherhood was overwhelming. Maybe her sleep-deprived mind was playing tricks on her. Then, one evening, she found a letter slipped under her door. No name, no return address. Just a single line written in careful, deliberate handwriting. "We made a mistake." Sophia's blood ran cold. She grabbed Emma from the bassinet, holding her close as she peered through the peephole. The hallway was empty, silent except for the hum of a distant television. Her mind raced. Was it Daniel? Elaine? Had they changed their minds? Could they? Panic clawed at her throat. She had signed the legal paperwork. Emma was hers. They couldn't just take her back. Could they? The thought of losing Emma sent a fresh wave of determination through her. She wasn't giving her up. Not now. Not ever. Clutching the letter in one hand and her daughter in the other, Sophia knew one thing for certain. Whoever had left that note, they weren't going away. Sophia barely slept that night. Every creak in her apartment, every shadow cast by the streetlights outside, sent a jolt of fear through her. She kept Emma close, her mind racing with possibilities. By morning, she had made a decision. She needed answers. With Emma bundled in her car seat, Sophia drove across town, straight to the last place she wanted to be, the Richards' home. The towering iron gates loomed in front of her, a stark reminder of the life Emma was meant to have. Taking a deep breath, she pressed the intercom. A long silence. Then a crackle. "Who is it?" Sophia swallowed. "It's Sophia. I need to talk." Another pause. Then the gates slowly swung open. As she pulled up the long driveway, her heart pounded. She hadn't seen Daniel or Elaine since the hospital. She had no idea what to expect. The door opened before she could even knock. Elaine stood there, her face pale, her eyes rimmed with exhaustion. She wasn't the composed, elegant woman Sophia remembered. She looked broken. "You got my note," Elaine said softly. Sophia stepped inside, her grip tightening on Emma's car seat handle. "Why are you doing this? You walked away. You gave her up." Elaine's face crumpled. "I know, and I regret it. Every single day." Sophia stiffened. "That's not my problem." Elaine flinched, but she nodded. "I know that too, but I need you to understand something. It wasn't just about wanting a boy. It was more than that." Sophia narrowed her eyes. "Then tell me the truth." Elaine hesitated, then exhaled shakily. "I had a brother," she admitted. "A twin. We were inseparable, but when we were 12, he drowned. I never got over it. When the doctors told us we were having a boy, it felt like I was getting him back. Like I was being given a second chance." Sophia's chest tightened. She had expected entitlement, not grief. "When I saw her," Elaine continued, her voice barely above a whisper, "it wasn't just disappointment, it was loss all over again. And I couldn't handle it." Silence stretched between them. Sophia looked down at Emma, her tiny face peaceful in sleep. She should have felt sympathy, but all she felt was fury. "You left her," she said, voice hard. "She's not some replacement. She's Emma, and she's mine now." Elaine nodded, tears slipping down her cheeks. "I know, and I don't want to take her from you. I needed you to know, and to tell you, if you ever need help, if you ever need anything for her, I'll be here. I don't deserve to, but I want to be." Sophia studied her. The woman who had once rejected Emma was now offering a lifeline. She didn't know if she could forgive her. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But as she turned to leave, Emma still safe in her arms, Sophia knew one thing for sure. She had been given a choice, and she had made the right one. Emma was hers. Forever. What would you do? Sophia made her choice. Emma is hers forever. But was it the right one? What do you think? Should Elaine be forgiven? Should Sophia let her into Emma's life? Let me know in the comments. And if you loved this story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more gripping tales. Your support keeps these stories coming. See you in the next one.